Ron Martinez, my brother-in-law, and we're here at Blendin Coffee Club, like I mentioned before. What are you drinking?
El Burro.
El Burro. And I'm having what did I get? A flat white. I don't know if you can see if that's in there, but it's so good. Thank you.
French press.
That's good.
How was yours prepared?
So I just got mine with, this is a flat white. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's with almond milk instead of regular milk.
But was it drip or?
I think it's drip. I'm probably totally wrong. I don't know. I'm boring. I normally get like just black coffee, just because it's simple and easy. Yeah, but a friend of mine, I was like, hey, suggest something for me so I'm not just doing some boring black coffee.
And that was jasmine. Is that what you got?
No, this was a different one. I forget which one they used, but I asked him. So yeah, I just normally ask people to start off introducing themselves. So name, where you're from, what's your family like, previous jobs, who are you?
Wow, I can't start with previous jobs because we'll be here all night. Yeah. But my name is Ron Martinez, and I'm a rare native Houstonian, born and raised on the east side of Houston, and then found my way because of different jobs and such. Eventually, making my way to Sugarland, but yeah, my job history is so eclectic. From out of high school, working for my grandpa at his fence company, Gibraltar Fence Company. Then going into, since we lived on the east side, went to some chemical plants, worked for Brown and Root as a warehouseman in one of the chemical plants, and eventually left from there and went to Houston Lighting and Power. That's how I paid my way through school. Graduated from U of H.
Yeah.
Go Cougs. And then eventually left HLMP after I graduated and started working in the marketing, advertising arena. So that's when I ended up on the southwest part of Houston, eventually purchasing a home in Sugarland, and now starting my own business, working in graphic design, 14 years and still going, but also now full-time at St. Lawrence Parish.
And you and my sister met in, what's called, what, divorce care?
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to ask why you went into divorce care. That's a dumb question. What was that? I'm not going to go into detail, but like, because I have other things I want to talk about. What was that experience like? Like, basically, like, where were you at to the point where you thought of entering in, and then what was like on the other side? How did it help you to where you were once you, I guess, stopped going?
Well, talk about humility. To admit that you need help, to find yourself. In my case, going through divorce, post-divorce, which I entered that ministry after I was already divorced. Some people are in the process or just got separated, but I entered post-divorce.
Do you think there's a better route? Like, should you do it in a process,
I think
or
that
it just depends?
Get there as soon as you can. As soon as, obviously, we don't want to be there at all. So anything you can do to, protect your marriage, to build your marriage, strengthen your marriage, be better to do that before you end up there. But if you find yourself there, get there as soon as you can, even if it's just separation, because a lot of people are separated before they're divorced. And so I found it after it was already, civil divorce and all that, so it was already done. But still, I found myself like, what am I doing here? What now? What now? You have just millions of questions and a lot of lot of hurt and pain, and it's hard to see through all of that. So the program when I entered was new. It was an inaugural program. They had just started, and they didn't know what was going to become, who would show up, but it turned out to be a lifesaver for me, because it just gave me all of these guidelines and helped me understand that I wasn't alone. Just to go around the round table and hear everyone talk about their situation and with their struggles, and I was just like, man, that sounds just like me. That sounds just like me. And so then you're kind of like this comfort, like I'm not alone. And it's a 13-week program, and it goes all the way from what is your relationship with God, because not everyone has a good relationship, and so part of the program is trying to reestablish that relationship and showing how he can help you through this trial, and all the way through now managing with your kids and finances and self-recovery in all of its different I guess all the different sides of it. So I was actually there 2 years before Adrian.
Okay.
And so when Adrian came in, I was already like, I don't want to say graduate,
yeah.
but I had already been through it a couple of times, and then I was giving back. So I started helping as co-facilitator, and when she came in the program, I just, she was just another person that was in the program. I didn't really know her beyond that, just her name, and there's strict guidelines on dating and things like that. So there was no interaction other than I knew who she was and kind of somewhat of her story.
Yeah.
And then I left the program because I was already like, okay, I've gone through it a couple of times. I've helped for a couple of years, and I think I'm ready to move on. And so I did.
What do you think was the biggest difference from like when you went in to when you finished the program? Not necessarily 2 years after, but once you were finished with the program, the 13-week. Yeah,
the biggest difference was my relationship with Christ, because my separation began in 2007, and my divorce was finalized in 2008. But prior to 2007, my relationship I was away from the church, and even though I had small children and we did baptism and but we just were not regular going to mass every week. It was just kind of like special occasion kind of thing. What do you call it? Cafeteria Catholic?
Yeah.
So, relationship was not very good. And so going through that, actually the program gets you into reading scripture and, the Bible, and you meditate on passages, and all of that began to, I was reading the Bible for the first time, and I was like, he's talking to me. I can hear his voice. I understand he's talking to me, and I began to have hope. Although it was, there was a lot of skepticism and a lot of doubt and fear and all that too. There was a lot of, okay, I can trust. I can hand this over. I can walk with him. And so I began to strengthen my relationship. So what was the biggest difference was my relationship and my practice of now going to mass, going to confession, basically a conversion that was happening over the course of those years.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I kept saying yes, more, surrender more and more, you know? And so that just grew my faith and grew my relationship.
I might be converting to flat whites. This is good.
I had one of those before, and I knew what it was, but I forgot. So someone told me to have a flat white one time, and I did, and I liked it.
Yeah, they're really good. So you mentioned building a business. Before we get to that, because that's where I want to spend most of our time, what are you currently doing now? You mentioned working at St. Lawrence full time.
I am the communications coordinator at St. Lawrence Catholic Church, and that means I do anything and everything to proclaim the kingdom. Mainly the bulletin. That's the big beast that we have every week. 19 pages, printed publication. And so all the content comes in, manage the content, graphic design, pre-press, production, all that stuff. Can't take credit for everything because there's articles that are coming in, there's finished flyers that are coming in, and I assemble everything and put it together, try to make it look pretty. So that the job at St. Lawrence, I feel, was actually an answer to prayer. As I was in my studio praying through my conversion, praying for a way to use my talent, my creative talent, my design ability, but use it in a way that was different to help build the faith, right? So faith-based design or Catholic creative, whatever you want to coin it. But I was asking for it, and I was looking for it, and I wanted a way to use that. Prior to that, I had worked in secular business, ad agencies, graphic design firms, corporate communications, financial companies, architectural firms, just all kind of different industries. And some of those didn't go so well. There's a lot of greed and corruption and things like that I think I got tired of working for those kind of businesses. And
hopefully
industry.
There's less of that where you're at.
Well,
I mean, it's going to be everywhere.
Funny you say that. So we've heard about the scandal in the church, and that hit me pretty hard because it did show me that the church is a human entity, just like anything else, and corruption, greed, lies, power
can seep in there. Yeah,
can seep into anything.
Yeah.
However, although it was like that in some sense, it's different because the church is there's the sacraments in the church,
and it's Holy Spirit led.
Right.
Humans running it, but
right.
Holy Spirit.
So it was different, and so
yeah.
I had to get past that, and I had to get to forgiveness pretty quick, and I did. So I don't know. Where was the original question?
Well, no, so you're there doing the media and communications, but you mentioned that you built a business that still exists now. And what's the name of your business? Design?
My business is Martinez Design Company.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you told me the story about how you got to the top and everything. So can you just explain just what it was like building it in the beginning?
Yeah. Well, when I graduated college, University of Houston, in the communications program, I had a great professor. He was a great mentor, and immediately as I began my senior work, and I was interning at an ad agency, one of the largest Houston ad agencies, and my professor kind of identified, hey, I've got some clients, and maybe I could send Ron to them, and they can help them. So I was still kind of like a senior, just about to graduate, and as I began to work with some of these small business clients, I began to recognize, like, wait a minute, there's people that need help. There's a lot of small businesses, they don't know how to do, X, Y, and Z. They don't, and none of the things that exist now existed back then. Social media, barely computer.
You want to give us a year? What year is this? Senior year, U of H.
96.
96?
Yeah, when I got to U of H, we were like these little apples, like little Apple computers. They were just coming in from all of the mechanical to the tech to the computer. It was just coming into fashion. So I saw that there was a need, and the software, and there's not like apps and all that now, so you needed someone that knew what they were doing. You had to hire like a professional, hire a plumber, hire a lawyer, or whatever. So I recognized that, but I still went to work in the agencies, in corporate communications, but I never lost sight of that. That, hey, there's a need, you could start your own business. You could serve small businesses. And so that I went into the workplace. I think first job was in an architectural firm, and I did their marketing and design. And that lasted about a year. Then I went to a financial company, which is pretty famous, but not for a good thing. And that was Stanford Financial. And I spent 4 years there, and I learned a huge amount of production and art direction and design. And I ended up in 4 years going from like the entry-level production guy to creative director and running the show for Alan Stanford.
That's awesome.
And that took me, all over the world, and to the top, winning awards, design awards, national awards, regional awards, and just working on a whole another level with huge budgets and huge projects. Probably that included video and expanded beyond just my print design experience. But I got burnt out. I mean, we were just going 100 miles an hour. And I also began to recognize some of the questionable activities as I became manager. It was just like, asking me to do some things that I just didn't feel were comfortable for me. And let's just say shady. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. So
you got to see some of the small writing on the wall.
And really, for me, it was not anything that was probably illegal or anything like that. It was more of integrity, like how I was to treat my employees or the people that reported to me, and I just couldn't be a part of that. I was like, if he's asking me to do this to them, then he's going to be asking someone else to be doing that to me. And so it was a matter of integrity. And as soon as I had the opportunity, I resigned. And this was 8 years before he was indicted.
Oh, wow.
It didn't surface, and he wasn't raided and all that till 8 or 9 years later after I left. So I did end up going to another design agency, worked there for a year, worked on the Shell Oil account, got to do some really nice projects. And then I believe the agency lost the account or lost some of the business, and I was laid off. So here I am 5 or 6 years into my career, already have experienced all of this good and bad, right? And so at the time I was like a little cynical and a little burnt out. And I was like, okay, so now what? Do I go back to work? And there was always a part of me that wasn't happy with everywhere that I worked, how they did things. I learned how to do things by the book, by my mentor in college, and I was like, if I ever had the chance to apply that in my agency or my studio, I would do it.
Yeah.
And also even at my time at Stanford, I was like taking notes, like everything that didn't work.
Yeah.
And so I was just looking for the opportunity to apply everything that I learned. So that was, that's, I guess, the issue that I was struggling with after my tenure at Stanford and some of the other agencies. But I never lost my idea. I was like, I want to start my own business. But I had an idea in my mind of when that was going to be, and that was not the time. When I got let go, I was like, no, I'm still 3-5 years away from starting my own business.
Yeah. Why?
Money.
Okay.
I wanted to have the right amount of savings, but I also wanted to have the right experience and things like that. But sometimes your timing is not God's timing. And so what I ended up doing was applying for jobs, and I got another job that summer. I got another job offer. I looked at the offer, and I was discerning this, obviously, like, what am I going to do? And I was just like, I just can't go work for another firm and go through this again.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? Before I accept this offer, I'm going to call everyone that I know in the business, and a lot of printing company, a lot of copywriters, marketing consultants, and I'm going to tell them I'm in business, and I'm going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And here we are, 15, 16 years later.
Really? Like, just like that? Like,
yeah.
I'm in business, and like, what were the responses?
It was very supportive, and it's, for something like graphic design, it's very low overhead. It's just your computer and your mind and your time and your, and so
Time and talent.
that's all I had to do. As soon as I did that, everyone started working for me, going out and saying, hey, they're sending me leads. I started vetting those leads, calling on people, and the first year out of the gate, which I always had some freelance work. Even while I was full-time, wherever I was, I've always had freelance work just because, hey, Ron does this. Call on Ron. So there was always that, but I had never pushed it to, proactively going after work.
Yeah.
But that's all it was. That's all the difference was proactively going after the work. And once you commit to that, you knock on enough doors, somebody's gonna say yes.
Right.
And that's what I did. I just kept my foot on the gas and kept asking. So I can tell you, like, my first year, from zero to nothing, right? Zero. I did like $25,000 in business in the first year, starting from nothing, and then every year it grew, double, until I kind of reached a little bit of a pinnacle, and it leveled off.
Yeah.
And so, but everything comes at a cost, and you gotta. This is the difference of walking on your own, as opposed to walking with Christ. And I can see that now. I didn't see it then. But and the motivation too, even though it was, inherently a good idea. I want to provide for my family. I want to build my business. I want to build my dream. You can see where you can kind of go astray, because the word I said 3 times was my. It was all about me.
Yeah.
The business was to glorify me, and I see the difference. To see the difference now in that. it was ego, ego driven, and the experience with Stanford was good and bad, because unlimited budgets meant that we were delving into things that were very luxury and very high end. And so you can get caught up in that materialism of extreme wealth.
Yeah.
And so you can set your target on that, right? Like I want to be a millionaire, I want to be, right, and this is good, this is my goal, and this is, so you know what Scripture says about the rich man passing through the eye of the needle.
Yeah.
You know, so it takes a very special person to keep their head on straight when they're around that much money and power.
Yeah. So like what was life like at the top for you? Like whether it was at Stanford or with your business, I mean, what was it like? How were you living?
Well, at Stanford, when I finally got up to creative director position, I mean, we could stayed in 5-star hotels in Miami and Antigua, and we got to travel, and we got vendors and everything like that, just catering to your needs, and so money was good. Bonuses were good, and travel and everything was good. So ultimately, this is what brought me to Sugarland. I built a home here.
Okay, yeah.
And so then now you want to carry that experience into your home, right? Bring all this luxury life into your home. And so I did that. And it just, it's not always sustainable. And when it's not sustainable, and when the house of cards falls, that's when you feel it the most. And a lot of people don't learn from that. They may get angry, they make it bitter, they may get depressed. We hear it all the time on TV when we see these people in high places, that they lose their lifestyle and they can't accept what's happened to them, so they take their own life, or they take someone else's life, or or they fall into a deep depression, whatever it is. They just can't handle the loss of all those material things and their identity in those things.
Yeah.
So, my identity was in those things, was in my success, in my career, and in the things that I accomplished, my home, and even to a certain degree, my wife, and all of that stuff. And so, when my house of cards fell, and I ultimately had to let go of everything, one at a time, or over a period of time. Fortunately, that I was back at the church, found divorce care, and found my identity in Christ.
Yeah.
Where I didn't need all of those things.
Yeah.
I didn't. It wasn't easy. I went kicking and screaming, and it was painful, but it was fruitful.
Yeah. What was and did your boys, like, they were growing up during the height of all this and experienced the I guess the other side, the downward slope of things? Yeah,
and but they were little, so they don't remember a lot, But in particular, Bruno, and what he said at our wedding day, just struck me as just probably the most valuable lesson that came out of it for all of us, was to just never lose hope.
Yeah.
And that's what Bruno saw, that no matter what happened, how many times I got knocked down and how bad it got, that I picked myself up, dusted myself off, and continued to have hope for a better day, and continued to get better.
Yeah. And so what was your family's like and personal like faith life like during like the height of everything?
Well, that's an interesting question, because a lot of this happened concurrently. Like, my journey back to the church began when the boys were little, when they began to were like in preschool, and they needed their first communion, and they needed their baptisms and things like that. So that brought us back to the church. And so as I began to get back to the church, and that would need me to explain that in my first marriage, after my wife, after our marriage, we didn't really go back to church. I mean, we were married for a decade. So we were away from the church for a long time, until we had kids and started needing to go back. But when we made our way back for sacraments for the boys, I began to like have the desire to go back, to be more involved, and to bring the boys into religious education, and and for us to be involved as a married couple and all that. And the theory that I have, or the sense that I have, is that the more that I did that, is the more that it pushed her away. And she did not want to have anything to do with it. And the more that I kept pursuing it, it drove us further apart. And I don't know. It's just what happened. And ultimately, too, it reached a breaking point to where, our marriage ultimately, we ended up in separation and divorce. But then, so after that, and about the time of the divorce, like within days, I had pneumonia. I almost died. And this was like a movie scene. Like, I'm on my knees, begging Christ for my life and begging for forgiveness, and I'll change and I'll promise, and that's one of those things he'll hold you to.
It's like you asked for it. It's coming.
The other thing I asked for at that time was the truth. Yeah, be careful what you ask for. Because he showed me the truth about him. He showed me the truth about myself.
What were those truths?
He showed me the truth about marriage. And that wasn't easy to accept the truth. The truth about myself was I was a sinner. In need of mercy, in need of a good, reconciliation. In need of, I was wounded, and I needed, I needed a lot of healing, not just from the divorce, but it brought up a whole lifetime of things that I needed to fix, and the truth about marriage was that there is no marriage without God being the center of it and the glue. So in that failed marriage, if we were not praying together, if we were not going to mass together, if we were not, if we were just doing our own thing, there's no question why it failed. And the truth about him is that he's loving, he's forgiving, he's all-knowing, he's God. He's incredible, and he's a God of second chances, and he wants what's best for me, and he's always there, and he's given us all the resources we need to get through life and to get through tough times, and that he was there all along.
Yeah.
He was there the whole time through my mistakes and through my triumphs, and he was there the whole time. And I just wasn't always listening, and I wasn't always asking. I always just kind of like my own will. And so I see all of that. I didn't discern things. It was more emotion and will, and under the guise of I'm doing the right thing. This is good.
Yeah, but based on what? Yeah, it's like whatever I want to do, whatever feels good.
Based on what's going to make me the most money.
Yeah.
Based on what's going to get me that $1 million prize. And so we learn.
That's awesome, just because being in ministry for so long and like seeing like couples who do drift from the church, who it used to be this case. It's not so much anymore, but they come back for like the faith and for the kids to get sacraments. But so many times it's like they're just coming for the sacraments. Let's hit those, then we're done. We're off again until then the kid needs to be married, But you, that coming back actually brought you deeper, and then you brought your family with it. What was it like, or what caused the downfall, but of your business, because it's still around, but what's a good term? Downsizing or loss of business?
5 things. It was
you've thought about it. 5
few times. Definitely the divorce, which then puts strain on your health. So divorce, health. I began, like I said, almost died. Had pneumonia, couldn't work. Someone else had to run my company for a little bit. Fortunately, I had a good colleague that did that and was trustworthy and did it well. There was a recession, 2008, 2009. Worst recession since the Great Depression, so they say. That happened. There was death, not only of my marriage, but from 2008 to 2012, I lost 4 family members in a row.
Yeah.
I lost my best friend to leukemia in 4 weeks after the divorce. I lost my grandpa, Frank de la Cruz, which I'm wearing his medallion here.
Yeah.
And he was my rock. That was a tough one. And then I lost my grandmother, Josephine Martinez, on my dad's mother. And then 2012, I lost my grandpa, Martinez. So I lost, which I was so fortunate to be older, and then many people still don't have their grandparents living, but I had my grandparents my whole life.
For a long time,
had a great relationship with them, but I lost them 1, 2, 3, and a best friend. So death of a business, 4 friends and family member, all within a 4 to 5 year time period. And I just felt like there was so much death and destruction around me that I was able to keep my business together for like a 2 years after, but with recession and death and illness and divorce, and the last one was digital technology. This is when Facebook Evite, all these things are emerging, and my business was built on print communications.
So all this do-it-yourself kind of stuff.
Overnight, all of a sudden, things are starting to change rapidly, where people are saying, "Oh, you know what? We're going to do an electronic invitation. We're not going to spend $2,000 on this corporate mailer to get people to sign up for our conference or things like that." So overnight, the technology began to change, like within 2, 3, 4 year period.
Yeah.
Now the companies that were able to focus and say, okay, we're gonna ride this wave of change, and we're gonna retool, and we're gonna reinvent ourselves, and we're gonna take advantage of this shift. They were able to survive. But where was my head? In all of that. So I was just I was doing well, just getting the work done that was coming into my shop. And the crazy thing is like 2008 was one of my most successful years. I finally hit everything that I dreamed that I could do. I built out my own studio. I had put 3 Mac workstations, had an intern, had an employee. We're working for corporate clients, and so everything in all this craziness is finally happening, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like now,
like one thing after another. Like now this,
now this, but which was good and bad in a way, because then I immersed myself in the work, and I did that. It was just like that was my escape, and I didn't deal with the divorce. But you can only do that for so long, and then finally, like 2010, after my grandpa Frank De La Cruz, after he passed away, it just was such a dagger in the heart. I just crashed. I couldn't keep it together anymore. I just crashed, and the business fell. Soon after that, with all of those things. And about 2011, after about 3.5 years in that studio, I had someone take over the lease, and I sold all the furniture and everything. And I went back to where I started, working on the kitchen table. And so that was definitely tough to let go of that. I think at the time, around the same time, I ended up selling my home, ended up selling my SUV. It was just like when a ship is going down and you start throwing everything overboard. That's what started happening. But it was a perfect storm of just a lot of things happen over 2 to 4 year period. And so then that's when I was like, okay, I gotta reinvent. I gotta do something different.
During that time, and you said the medallions for who?
My grandpa, Frank.
And you mentioned that he was
his nickname is Fire.
Fire? I think I've heard people say that. During that time, I know you mentioned he was a big part of your faith. He had a really strong faith. Did he play any part during the time when y'all were away? Was he ever trying to call you back? Hey, always. Are you getting to mass? And then
he was always evangelizing. He never stopped. From as far as I can remember, every other word that came out of his mouth was something about God and Jesus. Thanks be to God. Just something. He never stopped. And he was an amazing man. Anybody that you were to ask him about, he was a saint walking on earth. He was just amazing, and he was such a good person to. Everyone wanted to be like him. Everyone wanted to have what he had. Even myself. But back then, everyone wanted to have what he had, but didn't necessarily want to do what he did to get it.
Yeah.
Which he surrendered. He had surrendered, right?
Yeah.
He was awarded Catholic Man of the Year by the Archdiocese Galveston, Houston, at one point in his life. He built many Catholic churches, and so he just, that was the center of his life.
Wow.
The church, and so he always taught us, and everyone respected him. He was a person of wisdom and integrity, and so like I said, everyone wanted to be like him, just not everyone wanted to do what he did to be who he was.
Yeah.
I understand it all now.
Yeah. Or like understood what it is that he had. Like
Right.
he's happy, and I'm assuming he was well off.
He was a person of joy, just extreme joy and peace, and he was not extremely wealthy, but he could lend rather than borrow, and he did that on purpose because he kept his life humble and modest, and he lived in a modest home when he could have went and bought himself an extravagant home or whatever. But he did that to be able to do more, like more charitable stuff. So he kept himself at a humble and honest place. I mean, it just average. I think you ever hear about Warren Buffett? Like he still lives in the same 1970s suburban home.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean he's a multi-billionaire or what have you, and he's just living like an average little house.
Huh.
And so my grandpa, he was like that. He was able. My grandpa, he was like that. He was able to do things like he had his home, and then he bought his land in the country, and he put a house on the country, and so he gave us Shelby, and so which was another huge gift to the family to be able to be formed and have a whole life outside of the city. Growing up in the hill country, is a beautiful gift and experience that even now his great grandkids and my kids, they're in, they get to enjoy
experiencing
a legacy.
Yeah, and I guess even like a legacy to look back at and see that it's not the norm you see now. I mean, when everyone wants to be famous or whatever, and once they get famous, they're like shelling out all their money to get like the best stuff.
Right.
He was just like, I'm gonna like take care of what's important, and
you take care of your basic needs, and he was able to clean, nice cars and things like that. Just not over the top.
Do you think that's the key to getting through the eye of the needle?
I think
you mentioned earlier.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think that. This is just through my experience. Is because I've lived on both sides of it now. Yeah. The very lowly, because I went through some dark times after everything crashed. So I know what it's like to be very lowly, and I know what it's like to be, high luxury.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, he probably wants us in balance, in the middle. And if we can live in a modest home and have some money, save some money, give some money, I think that's, and he wants us to spend some money on ourselves, and so I think it's really about a balance that he wants for us.
Yeah, and I guess wherever you are in life, like because it's one of the greatest things just through working in like nonprofit stuff and then like in the church, like meeting people who are honestly super well off, but are the most humble, loving, giving, faith-filled people, no matter the amount of money they have, but God's first.
Take it like, you know, you see these entertainment, you know, musicians or whatever, that they're young and all of a sudden they got all this money and, you know, it just corrupts them, right? Because it's too much. They don't have the wisdom that goes with that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that in my case, that's the materialism, and I think that creeped into me, and it was a young person with too much, and it goes astray. I think if I could have that what I had then now, I would be more disciplined. Definitely, there's more humility. I don't have anything to prove. I don't have anything to, I don't have to impress people. You know, I'm just worried about how is God viewing me?
Yeah.
What is he? You know, what does he care? What does he think?
That's a good transition. What were people's? Because, you know, people are watching, whether you realize it or not. Your friends, family, coworkers, colleagues. Like, what was their reaction to your coming back and deepening of your faith?
Well, the old drinking buddies. You know,
they had some opinions.
Like, what happened to you? Where's the old Ron?
Yeah.
But the best friend that I described that died of leukemia, so he was from high school. We met on the beach at spring break. He had just come from California, and I had made a mixtape, little cassette mixtape. This is the 80s. And we were from the same school, and he's like, "Oh man, that's Big Audio Dynamite." And I'm like, "Nobody knows Big Audio Dynamite. Hey, you want to be friends?" And then we were buddies, you know. Like, and we had the craziest high school times. We went to college together, and you know, it was all about drinking and chasing pretty girls and all that stuff. So we had that kind of friendship. But at the time that I went through my separation was about the same time he got diagnosed with leukemia. And so now here we are, the same two crazy drinking buddies. Now we're going to the Divine Mercy Chapel, and we're praying the rosary.
You're at St. Lawrence?
Yeah. And now we're going to Mass, and now we're, you know, I think I even gave him the Diary of St. Faustina book.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, here we are, like, fighting for our lives. He's fighting for his life, I'm fighting for my marriage. And we both lost. You know, within a year, I was divorced and he passed away. So for me to be able to go through that experience with a friend was good.
Yeah.
And my other friends, you know, they just want the old Ron back, you know, go back to our old ways and stuff. And then my family was definitely supportive and happy that I was handling things the way I was handling them. And, you know, because so often you hear people turning to drugs or turning to alcohol or any number of things that they can turn to try to numb the pain. And I wasn't doing that. And so they were definitely happy that I was doing that, and that as I began to understand more and heal more and strengthen my faith more, I found myself not only lifting myself up, but lifting them up. And I was the one going through this.
Yeah.
So I was strong for them, I was strong for my kids, and I was strong for myself. And So that was definitely God, because I didn't.
Yeah, you couldn't have done that.
I couldn't have done that on my own.
Did you and your friend? What was your friend's name?
Steve.
Steve. Did you and Steve ever have a moment where y'all were like, "Look where we're at.
Yes.
We used to be doing this. Look what we're doing now."
Absolutely. We used to sit in the back, backyard see who could make the biggest pile of beer cans. And till the sun came up, and now here we are, like totally changed. And so yeah, we laughed about it, and but it just was God's will, and I learned to accept it. And I can tell you this much: what I said in the beginning was I asked God to give me the truth, and I'm grateful that He decided to spoon feed me and not unleash it all at once.
Yeah, like a fire hose.
Yeah, and I was able to take it little by little and understand it, and learn the lessons that He wanted me to learn.
Yeah. Do you think that since your journey back to the faith kind of came before, I guess, like the ultimate crash of your business, like, do you think because that came before that, you didn't go down those other paths of drugs, drinking, sex, all that stuff, self-destruction? Or do you think if you were the kind of person that wouldn't maybe naturally do that anyway?
I think anyone has a choice. I just wanted something different. I had already lived all those mistakes in my youth.
Yeah.
I had no interest in revisiting what got me to the failure in the first place.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, my way didn't work. Maybe I should try His way. And so it was a conscious choice to do that.
Did your grandfather get to see, like, you coming all the way back, or at least some of it?
Oh, wow. That's an amazing question. Because what ended up happening, he struggled from a prolonged illness, diabetes. It ended up in amputations, and it was very hard. And I spent nights at the hospital, and I stayed with him. And so we had long conversations, and I was obviously telling them what I was going through, because this was about the same time. And these were happening concurrently. And so he began to lose his faith. And I ended up, him being the person that gave me a faith to follow, when he became weak and began to question and began to waver in his faith, I was able to be there and give him his faith back before he left.
Yeah.
And really even apply some of the things that I learned to help him before he made his journey home. One example is, because of the divorce, he was so, it devastated him that this was happening to me, to my kids, and it wasn't my choice. It was my former spouse's choice.
Yeah.
So my grandfather was, he was devastated by it, and he was angry and hurt, and he made it very clear that when he died, he did not want her at his funeral, and he was very clear that he could not forgive her. And I helped him through that process because even I had already gotten to a point of like, at least maybe I didn't feel it, but I had already said, I forgive her.
Yeah.
And I knew why I needed to do that. And so I was able to share that with him. And he got there.
Yeah.
And I was able to strengthen his faith when it began to waver, because, you know, he's like, I've been a servant of God. I've done all these things, and, you know, and here I am, an amputee, you know, dying and suffering for a year or two, and a lot of medications in there too that make them, you know, not be themselves.
Yeah.
But he came around, and at the end he was strong, and he was, you know, he was ready to go.
Was she able to be at the funeral?
She was not.
No.
But at the time, it probably, you know, it wasn't good. Not only him, but other members of the family and stuff.
Well, like maybe like on his part, was he like open to it?
I don't. You know what? I don't think that we
got back to
that. It was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna forgive her because you say, you know,
that's huge.
And but in terms of her being there, I just don't think it was a good time.
Yeah. Why should someone go to divorce care?
They have an acronym called self recovery. SELF. So after divorce, you're completely out of balance. You know, all these different categories, emotional, physical, energy, you're just completely out of balance, even though you may not know it. So spiritually, emotionally, lovingly, financially, self-recovery after divorce. That's what it's all about, is getting you back in balance. And I mean, there's just that, I can't even unpack that. I mean, there's just so much in each of those columns that, you know, that someone needs, they need that help, whether they realize it or not. And many people, you know, said someone forced them to go there, or they went against their will or whatever. But many people, you know, admitted, like, wow, you know, I didn't really think that I was being affected this way, but I am. And then you get the other people that, oh, I know everything, I don't need anything, I don't need this, and I don't need to come back. But everyone needs help. You know, no matter what it is in life, we need help. We can't go through this life alone.
Well, thanks so much. You literally came straight from work to come here and meet me. Why would someone contact you for design work, and how can they contact you?
They can reach me at ron@martinezdesign.com. And I mean, why? If you want it done right, if you want it done on time, and on brand, on point, then yeah, I can. I had a few years of this. I can do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the coffee.
That's it.